about his mother's ties to France as he told of the firm friendship between the nations. The King will also have to adopt a slightly more political stance as he addresses the French Senate tomorrow. This is before a one-to-one meeting with President Macron. Well, it's been a busy programme. It's going to be another busy day for the King tomorrow. But for this evening, thank you for watching.
I'm Caitriona in New York, and this is BBC World News America. The UN General Assembly continues today with Ukraine's president criticising the powerful Security Council for not doing enough to help his country fend off Russia. And a fiery partisan hearing for the US Attorney General on Capitol Hill, what both sides are accusing each other of. And Iran's tough new step in enforcing how women and girls there dress. Hello, you're very welcome to World News America. We're coming to you from outside day 2 of the United Nations General Assembly here in New York, where high-profile and high-stakes meetings are ongoing. With many of the world's leaders all in one building, much of the diplomacy is happening on the sidelines, including the closely watched meeting between US President Joe Biden and Israel's President Benjamin Netanyahu. It's the first time the two leaders have met one-on-one since Mr. Netanyahu returned to office last December. And out of that meeting, President Biden has formally invited Netanyahu to visit Washington by the end of the year. President Biden also pledged to address issues relating to democracy, referencing Washington's concern over Israel's controversial judiciary reform efforts. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov defended Russia's veto power, calling it a legitimate tool. But President Zelensky is not the only one calling for change. Both Turkish President Erdogan and the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres have criticised the Security Council. So let's take a quick look at just what it is. It's made up of 5 permanent members chosen in the wake of World War II. Those are the US, China, France, the UK and Russia. Being a permanent member comes with some perks, notably the very thing President Zelensky was criticising, that veto power. Any of the 5 can veto a resolution. There are also 10 non-permanent members, 5 of which are elected each year by the General Assembly for a 2-year term. The Council's goal is to address threats to international security. It imposes sanctions, authorises the use of force, and can deploy peacekeeping missions. Critics say it fails to represent many regions of the world, and the veto power is increasingly making it harder to function. Mr. Zelensky has also made it a point to mention Russia's attacks on nuclear plants, including on Zaporizhzhia, during his speeches at the UN earlier this week. Earlier, I spoke with Rafael Grossi, the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, about the security of those plants. One of the big topics of the General Assembly this week has been climate change, and that comes as British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced efforts to soften UK net zero climate change commitments. In a statement at Downing Street, Mr. Sunak said the UK will delay a ban on new petrol and diesel car sales until 2035 from the planned 2030. The government will also slow the transition to heat pumps from gas boilers in homes and won't require homes to improve their insulation. Sunak said previous governments had moved too quickly on setting unrealistic net zero targets without getting public support. He said he is still committed to the net zero target. The stakes are increasing as Congress barrels towards a possible partial government shutdown. The Biden administration now says failing to fund the government could jeopardize US weapons shipments to Ukraine and also Taiwan. Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has failed to reach a deal that could pass the GOP-controlled chamber by the end of the month. Hardliners in Mr McCarthy's own party are threatening to withhold government funding unless Mr McCarthy and Mr Biden agree to spending cuts. But Kevin McCarthy says he's still optimistic. Attorney General Garland says that claims of a politicised or weaponised DOJ have led to security threats against the FBI and DOJ personnel. Iran's parliament has just passed a controversial bill that would increase prison terms and fines for women and girls who break its strict dress code. Those dressed, as it describes, inappropriately would face up to 10 years in jail under the bill. It still needs to be approved by the Guardian Council to become law. The move comes just a few days after the anniversary of the death of Mahsa Amini, a woman who died in custody after being held by the morality police for an allegedly improper hijab. The protests that followed have rocked the nation, with efforts to suppress them leading to hundreds reportedly killed in the crackdown by security forces. Iran has also been in the spotlight this week for a different reason, a prisoner swap with the US. Abraham Paley, the US Deputy Special Envoy for Iran, was on the plane home with the Americans who were released. I spoke with him earlier about that experience and about the developing news coming out of Iran. Armenia's government has claimed that Azerbaijan's forces have fired against its border positions near the village of Sotik. The BBC is unable to confirm these reports, but if true, they would represent a swift breakdown of a ceasefire brokered between Azerbaijan and ethnic Armenian separatists earlier on Wednesday. Just hours ago, Azerbaijan's president Ilham Aliyev said he had restored full sovereignty over the Armenian majority region of Nagorno-Karabakh, which has been ruled as an unrecognised breakaway republic since 1991. In a statement after accepting a ceasefire deal from the separatist forces, Mr Aliyev insisted he had nothing against the ethnic Armenian population, only what he called their criminal leadership. Mr Aliyev launched a military offensive 2 days ago, claiming that troops from neighbouring Armenia were on the ground in Nagorno-Karabakh. Armenian officials denied those claims and said Azerbaijan had carried out a clear violation of international law. Despite Mr Aliyev's reassurances, the White House has, in the past hour, expressed concern about a worsening humanitarian situation in the region. Many Armenians appear to be fleeing the region. Russian peacekeepers say they've already evacuated at least 2,000 people. Reports say hundreds, if not thousands, have headed to the region's main airport. Some ethnic Armenian officials say thousands more have been displaced. Meanwhile, thousands of people have gathered in the Armenian capital, Yerevan, to protest about the government's perceived failure to support the breakaway republic. Reyhan Dimitri has more. Well, finally, let's show you something that could have had a very different outcome. This is the moment. 2 seal pups got tangled up in a fishing net on a South African beach. Members of the public at West Coast National Park saw they were in distress and were able to cut through the nets to help them. It meant the pair were eventually freed and were able to make their way back into the sea. I'm Caitriona Perry. Thank you for watching World News America, coming to you today from New York. Do take care. Bye-bye.
Hello there. Plenty to talk about in Europe.